So my main point is that if you read this great swatch of Vatican documents, and I can give you lots of quotes, but basically they start kind of high-minded, recognizing that human beings are spiritual, personal, not merely animals, although we are animals. But then when they get down to, and when can you do it? Well, it's only if it's going to reproduce children in the, what they call the natural way, right? So they're very, so it gets very biomechanical, right? And so they're against in vitro fertilization. I mean, one reason might be that they're throwing away fertilized eggs, and so that would be like abortion, but they're against it because it's not the biomechanics that we came with, right? Even though that would reproduce more children and be open to life, et cetera, et cetera. So there's fertility religion. So basically then we move from social analogies to conflating real religion, true religion, with civil religion. Then we note that civil religion has a big department that has to do with fertility religion. And then we get God as the author of all the, and enforcer of all these sexual taboos that we came with. Now there's one more step which characterizes these conservative documents. See, these people are very smart. So taboos in themselves are non-rational. I mean, they're irrational. They're trying to make something unthinkable and unspeakable. And so they're not rationalized. You say, why not? As people did in the 60s. You're not supposed to even go there, but the people don't have anything, the church especially, had nothing to say, right? Because it was not speaking or thinking about those things. That was the way it was. But of course, when you get to be a theologian or an ethicist, then you think maybe you should have something to say. So the Vatican and even Radner and Andrew Goddard, they get offended if you say, well, you're just embracing taboo morality. You talk about an abomination to the Lord, right? And that's taboo morality. We need to have, we're rational beings. We need to have something articulate to say here. And so they say, yes, of course, let us theorize. Right? We're not just operating on taboos. We have arguments. Now the arguments of the conservative evangelical, sex and gender conservative evangelical Anglicans tend to go like this, and they involve appeals to authority, right? They are, it's in God's word written that it's not okay, right? So one of these people who is very prominent in the Church of England said to me, look, every time it comes up in the Bible, homosexuality comes up in the Bible, it's condemned. It's in God's word written, and that settles it. That's that argument, because God's word written is the ultimate authority for Christians. Faith and practice for Christians. That's the evangelical premise, right? The Vatican, of course, thinks that the Bible is an authority, but there are other authorities, right? And they even appeal to philosophy. They say, well, there's such a thing as natural law. And natural law is something that reason can discover. And you ought to do what, as Aristotle put it, right reason dictates. And the natural law dictates this or that, then that's what you ought to do. Or if the natural law forbids this or that, then that's what you ought not to do, right? And it's a matter of what reason can see. So we say, well, okay, let's just grant you that for the sake of argument. I'm not a natural law theorist myself, but suppose we gave you that from the idea that we ought to do what the natural law commands and avoid what the natural law forbids. How do we get to that, from that to no LGBT lifestyles, or no, how do we get there? We need another premise, right? We need the premise that these are unnatural, right? But of course, that's the premise that needs defense. Said no birth control, it's unnatural. And you say, well, that's the premise that needs defense. What's unnatural about it, Where's your argument for that? Where's your evidence? Well, it doesn't come forth, you know, and of course it's a matter of empirical study. It's just assumed. And then, I mean, there's some really telling passages in which you start out with this natural law argument, and then suddenly, you know, it's so different from everything that it couldn't possibly be approved under any circumstances that, you know, you think, okay, you just lost it. We didn't get our argument for that premise, so, you know, so there. Okay. So my claim is then that the way conservatives talk themselves into the idea that it's certainly okay to criminalize LGBT lifestyles, and certainly okay not to provide institutions to house these lifestyles and to give legal protections and benefits and so on to these lifestyles, the way they talk them into it is through these 4 steps, right? There's the social analogy, which makes God a member of our society who plays a social role and therefore is complicit in the injustices of our society. There is then the claim that God is the conflation of true religion with civil religion, which turns God into the author and enforcer of the social norms within our society. Then there is the fact that civil religion is so focused on the fertility aspects, right, the management of reproductive potential, that God becomes the author and defender and enforcer of all of the sexual taboos that the society forwards. And then there's the rationalization of these taboos, which depends on certain kinds of particular premises, which are either taken from authority or left under-defended. And what I want to say is, amongst other things, that this kind of picture, which I think, yeah, I guess I thought there was something to it in any event. I mean, what's happening is that God becomes, I mean, they often say, you often hear in the debates that LGBT activists are giving in to the spirit of this present age, right? But I'm going to say that this strong arm from tradition, strong argument from tradition, which says, well, okay, we have to start with the fertility religion of the Hebrew Bible and leave that in place because we basically have to start with tradition when we start trying to figure out who God is, and we make God a member of society, we make God the author and enforcer of society, we make God the author and I mean, basically what we're doing is appealing to the spirit of past ages as a justification for repeating the sins of the fathers. That was my anyway. What do you think?